Hey, this is Mark A. Altman.
And this is Darren Dochterman.
And this is Ashley Miller.
And we are the Inglorious
Treksperts.
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 And so glad to have you all back with us. It's getting close to the holidays, getting close to that holiday spirit. And
been
to
this
celebrate, we know like a lot of you don't know what to buy. And if you've already owned the 50-year mission, you want to pick up, there's a new tabletop game, a new Star Trek tabletop game called Star Trek Into the Unknown. And we're going to be joined by the designers and writers of that game, Michael Gurnis and Max Brook, who are going to tell us, first of all, going to tell us what a tabletop game is. That was very helpful. And they're also going to tell us about how they designed the game and what you can expect when you unbox it. It's pretty cool stuff. It's funny because we met Michael. Ashley and I were in Des Moines for a horror convention, and he was a big fan of the podcast and wanted to tell us about this game that he did. We didn't know what it was because, I mean, who knew? I thought it was going to be like a little piece of paper, that's something he drew on and said, whatever. I didn't know. And he brings out this beautiful box with a Jem'Hadar cruiser and the Enterprise. It was gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. And we realized, wow, this is a real thing. This is a real game.
It was beyond
stuff.
gorgeous, dude. It was like the level of detail was awesome. It was almost Eagle Moss quality. It was crazy. Like I wanted to have the game just so that I could have the miniatures.
Yeah, no, it was pretty neat.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're a fan of the ships, and who isn't, this is a great way to get some of these ships because I haven't really seen the Jem'Hadar ship in any kind of real. I think Eagle Moss did the little one, but I don't think they did.
No, Eagle Moss did the big
version.
one. Yeah,
Did they? Okay.
I narrowly missed grabbing it off the table in Vegas. There you go.
But I got to tell you, the food there, Darren, was terrible. Just terrible. I did not enjoy a single meal in. You missed nothing. He liked Zombie Burger, and I
really
realized
like
what it was. Zombie Burger was, compared to everything else, was better. But as Ashley pointed out, the thing about it that was so great was the menu.
Yeah.
Did they have fancy names for things?
Yeah. But they were all like lines from zombie movies. So there literally was a burger called "We're coming to get you, Barbara." I mean,
which is great.
That doesn't sound like one of I would order, though.
Yeah, right? He was like, "What's in these burgers?"
Well, yeah, exactly.
I don't feel too.
I would
good.
like it very rare.
Yeah, exactly. But they had pictures of zombies on the walls, and they had all these zombie posters. It was cool. It was cool. I mean, I don't know if "cool" is the right word, but it was adequate. It was good. But then we went to this other place that was just awful, and nobody had bottled water. This is true. I asked for water, bottled water. They said we don't have bottled water, so I said okay.
Because they don't need to bottle their water there.
No, let me tell you, they do. Because I had this water, I spit it out. I literally spit it out. It was it was undrinkable. I'm like, what the hell is this? I said,
yeah, I know.
This is not water. I don't know what this is. It was awful.
Yeah, I think it was just a function of all of like the nitrates and crap because of all
I don't know.
Corn like that's out there growing in the field, and they're saying like they have like these incredible like filtration systems, and maybe they do, but good Lord,
children of the corn.
Yeah,
it was bad. It was bad. Yeah, but look, obviously, we met some nice people, as we always do with these events, and we're so excited to be in Columbus in December, where we're back at full power, and we're going to be doing the Treksperts thing, and we'll have our booth, and we'll be interviewing people and talking, and we're actually going to do something really cool. You know what we're doing, guys? The plan is on Sunday, December 8th, to do a live episode from the convention, we're not live on tape, like a live episode that will stream on our Discord server. Now, it'll eventually become an episode on the podcast, but if you actually want the excitement, the electricity of live television, of live broadcast, we're going to try and stream it live from the convention center in Columbus, Ohio, which is going to be very exciting. So if you are going to be in Ohio, we'd love to see you. And join us for that panel where you might be part of the whole thing, the whole Megillah.
It's the Fine, We'll Do It Live show.
Fine, we'll do it live. That's right. That's right. It's going to be like that Saturday night movie that I love so much. It's going to be like, like that.
Yeah,
we're going to be running around
We're
trying
going
to
to
get it
cut
together.
Billy Crystal completely out of it.
I can guarantee you, Billy Crystal will not be in it.
That's right.
So we could. I'll
Just
tell
don't
you
have
right
time.
now. We don't.
It's
we
like
don't
what Tina
have time.
Fey said about 30 Rock versus Studio
Studio
whatever the hell.
Studio 30
Yeah,
or
it's like
Studio
it's
60 or
it's
Studio
half
60.
as long but funny.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like Studio 60. I have to say,
Yeah.
all 13 episodes of it or whatever it was, but because it was Aaron Sorkin. I love Aaron.
Uh-huh.
But
so does he.
yeah, and he should because he's genius. But I got to say, it is possible Andy Kaufman will be on it. Who knows on our live show? But definitely not Billy Crystal.
Okay.
But it'll be interesting because we're going to tackle a subject I think that's really interesting, which is what's next for Trek. What's next for Trek? Sort of speculating about the future and you know, especially a lot going on right now with David Ellison taking over Paramount, Skydance, and how that will impact on the future of Star Trek. So we'll talk about that. Not only what we think the future of Trek is, but what we'd like to see as well, without doing anything proprietary because you got to pay us for that.
Well, should we bring in our guests first and hear from them, and then we can talk about this?
Well, I'm not finished talking yet. So anyway,
Yeah, we got shit to say.
I want to say also. Recently, I don't know if you saw Trek Movie today. Our friends at Trek Movie, they wrote an article about how Jerry Ryan, announced that she had been approached about doing a Star Trek series that she turned down. Now, again, this is another thing. It's like we say these things, and then 6 months later, people announce it like it's news, right? Yeah. I think on the podcast, I'm pretty sure we talked about the fact that John Logan had written a pitch for Jerry Ryan and Kate Mulgrew, and that Jerry Ryan turned it down because she wanted to do Legacy. And quite honestly, I don't think there were various other reasons that Jerry did not want to do the show, and she passed on it, right? And obviously that did not. It was going to be a Western kind of. It was like I don't know. So anyway, we've said this, and it makes me crazy
6 months late
when people say big news. Big news. It's like when we announced the Seth Green project, not Seth Green, but the guy who wrote Abraham Lincoln
Alan
Vampire.
Parsons project, only different.
Anyway, when we announced this whole idea of the Star Trek Independence Day, which was in development over at Paramount, which was going to be sort of a soft reboot, but was going to be more earthbound, and that this was happening, and it was kind of going to be their version of Star Trek: The Beginning, and we announced this like 6 months before, and then all of a sudden it's like. If Paramount announces it, and then everybody's like, "Oh, can you believe it? They're doing a Star Trek Independence Day." It's like, yeah, we talked about this on the show like 6 months ago. It's like, do you not believe us? I don't know.
Don't believe it. Don't trust it.
Apparently, right? Is that how much it goes in one ear out the other? That people don't even know. They don't know. They don't remember.
Yeah, they don't know. They don't know.
I don't know. But it is getting very close to the holidays, so it was great to sit down with Michael and Max and talk about the Star Trek Into the Unknown. So as Darren said about an hour ago, let's now bring on our Max and Michael to talk about their fabulous game, and we'll be back after a few commercial messages and the interview with a few closing thoughts at the end of the show. So stay tuned. And here we are with Michael Gurnis and Max Brook. They are the designers and writers of the new Star Trek tabletop game, Into the Unknown. And I want to point out, Star Trek Into the Unknown has a colon. It's not colonless like Into Darkness, because that was clever, not. But this has the colon. It's Star Trek : Into the Unknown. Anyway,
I think it's important to have a colon.
I'm glad we got that all figured
Into Darkness is practically all colon.
Yeah.
Anyway, but this is we're really going into darkness because, of course, it's a tabletop game set during the Dominion War, which is certainly Ashley and my favorite era of Star Trek. It's pretty freaking cool. Everybody's like, when are they going to do the Romulan War? Who cares? They did the Dominion War. We don't need the Romulan War. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
So
they did the Romulan
gentlemen.
War in one episode. It was called Balance of Terror. It was awesome. Shut up. Get over it. Let's talk about the Dominion War.
So I'm really happy to have you. Michael, in case people don't know, is a longtime listener of the podcast. And we had the pleasure, Ashley and I, of meeting him in Des Moines, Iowa, where he showed off, because we weren't planning on doing an episode on this, but then he showed us the game. He had a mock-up. I don't know if it was the final game, and it was so freaking cool that we said we got to do an episode on this. We got to spread the good word about Michael's game, and so that's what we're doing. And we're so glad to have you guys, because I will be the first to say I am not an expert by any means in tabletop games, and I'm sure you've done a lot of press with the tabletop community. What's good is this is a chance to reach out to people who are as dumb and stupid and oblivious as I am. So I'm going to ask you a really simple question about, can you explain for us, because I think we all know Dungeons and Dragons is a role-playing game, right? We know Monopoly is
a dice rolling game.
Is an 1,800-hour game. We just know it goes on forever. We don't know. And there's a guy in a hat, right?
Not if you know how to play it.
Tell us about what a tabletop game is, the sort of how it's played, and then we'll talk specifically, obviously, about this really cool Star Trek Into the Unknown game.
Yeah. So our specific game is a minis game. So we use plastic spaceships, and you fly them around on your tabletop. There's not a board or a grid. You're using maneuver tools that come with the game and rulers to measure out your movement, and you're gonna maneuver around between systems, and you're going to be you're going to be having an encounter. It might be a battle. It could go a lot of different ways, but basically, our tabletop game in particular is of the minis game genre.
And miniatures games sort of encompass a lot of different things. I mean, a lot of what people might think of, and a lot of miniatures games, including some we play, are, tiny little infantry all lined up in a row, with their pants painted the right color. And
did the starship's pants get painted the right color, or did the starships not have pants?
Well, we'll see how far we get. I mean, if we get to species 8472 in their bioships, I mean,
they don't wear pants.
Whoa,
Right?
there's a deep cut. Whoa. Okay. Nice.
But yeah, so for our game in particular, we're dealing with spaceships rather than infantry, though we do have teams. But yeah, so miniatures game is a pretty big space. Our game is very much meant to be a miniatures game that really gets you into an episode of Star Trek. We really wanted to have that experience of the arc of an episode unfold over the course of your game. And so as you're playing, you have your initial setup, you'll learn some things about what's going on. You'll have a little bit of information your opponent doesn't have, and your opponent will have a little bit of information you don't have about what might be going on. And then at the midway point of the game, that's revealed, one of two complications happens, and the game changes a little bit. And suddenly what might have been a, conflict of arms becomes a negotiation, or what might have been a negotiation becomes a conflict of arms. And there's also a lot of player choice in this. We wanted to pull faction identity into that and really make that a big part of it. So different factions will have different incentives. The Federation really wants to, keep things diplomatic, would prefer not to start shooting. The Dominion would also prefer that, but for different reasons, and is way more willing to start shooting if they don't like the outcome. And so a lot of that comes from miniatures games, but also from role-playing games, as you mentioned. We've both worked on those as well, and they're definitely a big source of inspiration for us too.
So how do you adjudicate combat or, competitive skill checks? Is it dice? Is it cards? Like, how do you do that?
Yeah, so in our game, it's dice. The way you perform actions in the game is you have a set of officers who are spread out amongst your ships, or you can sort of concentrate them a bit more. That's one of your player choice options. And you have your officers give orders, your ship takes actions, and then if that action is something that we want there to be a chance for you to fail at, like firing a weapon or making a science test to analyze an anomaly, you'll pick up some dice. You'll roll them. If you're using an officer as opposed to a standby action for the ship, you'll get a bonus. And so it's adjudicated by dice, and it's there are some other randomizing elements as well. But dice are the primary one.
Now, so Ashley, you ask all these smart questions. Right. I'm looking at my notes, and my first question, and I should just let you ask the questions because this is a dumb question, but is it right they charge the same for self-service at the airport kiosk as for a cashier. So I guess this was when I was in Des Moines. I got really upset because, I went to get like a chocolate bar and like some gum, right, at the store on the way to Des Moines. And, they try and drive you to self-serve, right? But I'm like, if I'm paying the same amount, I just want to go to the cashier. And it's like, she's like, oh, are you doing credit card or cash? So I said, I'm doing credit card. So she said, oh, you have to do self-serve. But they're not giving me a discount for doing it myself. So I'm like, nope, I'm paying cash. And then she got all upset because she had to open up the window to do it. But I don't think that's fair that they don't give you that option because they're already charging so much for everything.
And you
anyway,
wrote that down.
I don't know why I wrote that. It was because of the Des Moines. I had all these notes about Des Moines that I didn't want to forget.
That was one of them.
My next question was this. Was one of the things that obviously we ask a lot of people who work on the comic books and work on the video games is how do you balance Star Trek is very unique in the fact that it's deeply philosophical. It's very talky, right? In dealing with ideas, and I say that in the best sense of the word. So how do you sort of balance the game's combat with the more narrative elements to deliver sort of an experience that's true to Star Trek in this setting?
That's something we thought a lot about. Believe it or not, like one thing that crystallized that I heard actually on this show one time, for me, kind of what we wanted to get out of this game was that in Star Trek you win by understanding, and I thought that was a really good summation. And it's not that that kind of gave us the direction we wanted to go. Obviously, we're taking what's a narrative, and we're giving you, the player, the agency to build your own story. And we're not necessarily doing like a mystery genre or like like something where you're gonna like solve, bring pieces together and figure something out that way.
It's not a puzzle.
It's not a puzzle.
Not a clue.
Yeah. But we wanted to represent like everything that happens in Star Trek and not just make it a strictly a battle game. And
so you could basically decide that you're going to beam a lot of tribbles over to the Jem'Hadar engine room where there'll be no tribble at all.
If the mission allows for that.
Is that like not in your list of options?
If the mission permits,
okay.
we've definitely talked about that. We've talked a lot about trouble with tribbles and more tribbles because there's a lot of really interesting stuff in those two episodes from the perspective.
Oh yeah, the tribbles
game.
would be a perfect bioweapon if you think about it. I mean, if you really wanted to destroy the Dominion, you don't have to stop the changelings from being able to shapeshift. You just take a shitload of tribbles over to the Gamma Quadrant, and you just drop them onto planets that produce all of their grain and all their food.
Well, it's good you're not writing these games. I will say, to Daren's point, that, I would play Star Trek Clue. Mr. Henkist did it in the briefing room with the knife. Done.
Red Jack.
Right? Yeah. So, okay. So so let's say we've just gotten this for Christmas or Hanukkah, somebody who's not familiar so much with they open up the box, a beautiful box. They see these gorgeous spaceships that are in there. What would the first thing be? Let's assume they've read the instructions. They're up to, how would the game begin? Just take me through like the beginning of the process of starting to play into the unknown.
So we designed the campaign, and there's two ways to play. You can play a campaign game, or you can play a game using some cards we've provided. But the best way to learn is the campaign, because the campaign is really designed to be an on-ramp. And the campaign is a series of sort of fixed story missions, and they ramp up as they go. So the first one teaches you sort of the basics of maneuvering the ships. The second one teaches you about using teams, Mike? I'm trying to remember. Yeah, the second one teaches you about using away teams. And so these missions kind of teach you the mechanics one at a time, because there's quite a few different mechanics, because a lot of things can happen in Star Trek. But we really wanted to make it so that there was an on-ramp that was manageable, because we know it's a big game, there's a lot there. And so as you play through that first story, you'll sort of unlock those things as you go and learn how to handle more and more things, until by the end you're handling diplomacy and shuttles and teams, and you have all these things, but you haven't had to learn them all in one sitting.
Is that why you chose the Dominion War for your backdrop? Because, like you're not going to do a tabletop game based on the Drumhead, right? Not very exciting. So you said the
It was
Dominion,
Admiral
and
Shafi
obviously,
in the briefing room.
I mean, social deduction game? That could be pretty good.
okay, maybe you guys can make it work. I'm not that smart. So anyway, my question for you guys is kind of obviously a big gaping hole in the mythology is what was the Enterprise doing during the Dominion War? So tell us how much conversation went on when you and how you ended up, because obviously you have a lot of experience doing tabletop games and with other IP. So how did this come about, and then how do you begin to develop the idea for once you have the license to do Star Trek? How do you? Because it's such a wide and varied universe. How do you then focus on this as your subject?
Well, it started out with a longtime colleague of ours invited us into this project, and we all sat down. We had a lot of talk about, what we wanted to focus on. We very quickly felt like the Dominion conflict was the obvious thing to cover when we are going to do like a tabletop game involving lots of battles and starships. We knew that one thing we wanted to do is we wanted to depict that era, but we're not necessarily trying to, retell each of those stories and plots exactly like it happened. We're kind of, so for example, like the Galaxy class that's right in the box, even though you don't see the Enterprise D in the Battles of the Dominion War, that doesn't mean that that's always representing the Enterprise D. It could be another Galaxy class ship. It also doesn't mean that the Enterprise D doesn't interact with this timeline. Because
I was going to ask you about that because, and this is just how nerdy I am. I was sitting there going, okay, so it's the Enterprise D. So Enterprise D destroyed generations, obviously, before they changed to like the to the gray top uniforms. It means by the time the Dominion War happens, it means that the Enterprise E was in service, maybe, or there is some weird sliver of time where the Enterprise D was still in service and we were screwing around with the Dominion. But I'm not sure. But the thing is, this is the real point. Other than, I don't know if you guys know this or not, because we do this podcast or we're nerds, we talk about Star Trek, so we like it. I want to talk about those miniatures. I mean, put aside all of that canon bullshit that I was just spewing. The miniatures that you guys had made are amazing. And for my money, literally, they're worth the price of admission, whether you ever play the game or not. Those minis are great. Can you talk about developing those miniatures and what to expect in the glorious day of unboxing when you find them?
One of the big things is, when we came onto the project with WizKids, they had a few things they wanted because they'd already done a previous Star Trek miniatures game in Star Trek Attack Wing, and they wanted a game that was very different from Attack Wing. They wanted a game that was either to scale or close to scale, at eyeball distance, because Attack Wing, pretty nice miniatures, but the miniatures were not really to any particular scale. They were just sort of, the Jem'Hadar fighter was, half the size of the Enterprise or whatever. It was just sort of a little more abstract. And they really wanted a game where the scale was tight and they wanted the Enterprise to have saucer separation. And those were like two key things where, they felt very strong about that. And we thought that was great because it's a lot of fun to get to sort of do that. So we've spent a lot of time digging through various source books for exactly how large Klingon birds of prey are, etc. But yeah, so those miniatures, they were really a big part of WizKids' vision, from the very start, from those, first meetings. And the quality of those miniatures is a big thing. And John Schaefer, a colleague of ours who works at WizKids now, worked at Fantasy Flight before. He's really done a lot with the sculpting team and with the tampos. The way the process they do for that, where they have these rubber stickers or rubber pads that apply the coats of paint. They've gotten that to a really exceptional level. And we were thrilled when we saw the first, the first finals, because you get the proofs back, and it's always kind of like, okay, these look good, but are they going to be able to produce this at scale? And when we saw those first finals, it was like, okay, wow, these are really crisp.
Mm. Yeah, they look. I mean, they look gorgeous. Go ahead, Mike. What were you saying?
That's how you get the lettering. Like that's how we can get like USS Enterprise, D, on the model.
It's good you didn't have space dock in there. Darren would be very upset. It would be out of scale.
The closest thing I can relate this to is back in the day. Of course, there were the FASA Starfleet Battles games, right?
Yeah,
and those developed an entire strata of fans who were just interested in the metric tonnage of starships and their firepower and their lift mass ratio and all these technical things. It sounds to me that isn't this game. That it sounds like there may be a little bit of it, but that you're more in dealing with personnel engineering. Is that correct?
Yeah, we took some of the spirit of those games, and I do think about the hardware, but what we really wanted to capture was the narrative feeling of Star Trek, and how an episode can start with one mission one way and then evolve as you go, and that like the characters are such an important part of it.
Mm-hmm.
But we also wanted to get the things like your energy management is a big part of how you have to manage your starship.
Right.
Well, what resources did you draw upon for each ship's like tactical abilities? Did you look at like the Franz Joseph technical or the Star Trek Encyclopedia or any of these things? Were they an influence on you when you were sort of creating the tactical abilities for these ships?
Oh yeah, we were diving into anything we could find. We were looking at the technical manuals. We got all those at the start of the project. The some of the hero collector information that was published alongside of them. We read some of those were available from the recently revitalized line of shit. I don't remember what it was called.
Yeah.
We also, we would look at stuff like Star Trek Online. We typically took that with a grain of salt, but sometimes it would have information, and sometimes you could find cross-confirmed information that sort of helped. There was some information right from the horse's mouth. There were files that we had via WizKids from Paramount that just said X and Y and Z are true in some cases. That always easy when that was the case. But yeah, we really tried to dig into, all the different sources we could find. We went through the Modifius Star Trek role-playing game to look at some things there for ideas they'd played with. So we were really trying to be omnivorous. And then, of course, we went and just rewatched a lot of episodes.
But, it's interesting. Oh, Ashley, I'm sorry. Did you want to ask something?
No,
okay,
no.
so
no, go ahead.
The thing about when we were talking to Dan Martin about Star Trek Resurgence, the video game, he talked about how the scripts were, thousands of pages for the video game. I'm wondering, when you were developing and writing this game, where does that process start, and where does it kind of end up, and how much writing do you end up doing, and what is the process between the two of you for doing that?
A lot of what we do is the writing kind of comes secondary to a lot of like prototyping, figuring out the components, and kind of envisioning how that's going to work first.
Mm-hmm.
And then you actually start writing like ability text and everything else, but you kind of got to organize like the skeleton of the game first. I think that's how it's kind of always worked for us.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
For each of the what did you call them? They're not missions. They're what did you call the type of game?
There's story missions and there's
Campaign
missions.
Incident missions.
Right. Do you have a finale in mind that you want to get to, that the players may take circuitous routes to get to, but is there a solution to each of these?
To some degree, there are two solutions to each. So the way the complication works is for the story missions, each faction has a fixed complication, whereas in the incident missions, you're each secretly dealt a card from a pool of cards that match the traits of your previous cards. So for the story missions, we sort of have two different ways it can two different finales that can go down, and then there's sometimes branching paths on that. So for instance, if one of the finales reveals, that there's a space creature that is imperiling, a space creature phenomenon that's imperiling both of your fleets, that can go that complication itself can go two ways. You can either figure it out and work together, or you can
It's
take
either a
mutual
god
loss.
or it's a mother.
Yes.
Sometimes both.
Yes,
Or a computer.
Yes.
exactly.
Did you guys have like a favorite ship that you wish you could include? Obviously, very proud of the fact that the D can separate, do the saucer sap. I'm sure Gene would approve. But are there other ships that you wish you could have included that you couldn't, or were just it didn't work for this particular game? I mean, what are some of your favorite Star Trek ships?
You gotta be choosy when you're starting a line. Like, hopefully this will be a smashing success, and we'll be able to do all the ships we want to do. But for example, I love the Miranda class, and that just wasn't gonna fit exactly in the core set for a lot of reasons. But that's like really, really close down on the list for us.
Well, maybe it'll be something you can transplant into a later game.
Something you can transplant. You boys have to be sure about this.
One of the things about the miniatures game too is a lot of miniatures games, including ours, sort of have this expansion model where you have this core set that it's this anchor product gets you into the game, but then we'll also have subsequent releases. And so WizKids has already announced that we've got a couple of expansions. Those are sort of one of them is done on our end and is working through with WizKids. The next one we're sort of working on after that. So knock on wood, if this all goes well, we'll get to make a lot of ships.
Great. Yay. And that's I love everything about that, because I cannot get over it. And I have to tell you, people who are listening to this or watching this on YouTube, or you're beaming it into your Vision Pro or whatever, I cannot express to you how great those miniatures look. They are absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, and the game Star Trek Into the Unknown is available for the holidays you can get it in your local gaming store, and if you don't have access to the local gaming store, then they can go to the WizKids website, can't they? Mm-hmm. So yes. And is that WizKids.com?
Yes.
Okay, so you can go to WizKids.com for more information, and they'll probably direct you to your local gaming place where you can get it. But it's absolutely worth. I always think the Complete Strategist, because I grew up in New York. That's what I know is the gaming store. So that's where we used to go as kids and teenagers to go get our stuff at the Complete Strategist. There were two great stores. It was Forbidden Planet, which is where you get your books and your toys, and the Complete Strategist, which had all the games, and then of course. It burned brightly and burned out was the wonderful Federation Trading Post where you got all your Star Trek stuff. But that was short-lived.
Those all sound like cool places.
They were.
Did you get the Starfleet Technical Manual? Was that it at one of those places?
No, I got that at Walden Books.
Yeah. Oh man, Walden Books.
That's a great book.
I still have it. It's right here somewhere. The original from '76, I have it.
Yeah.
And as I know Darren does.
Indeed.
Yeah, and the blueprints also at Walden Books. This is back when there were bookstores, and
I got the blueprints at Federation Trading Post.
Oh, that's cool. And you know what? What was great about that too was they also had cashiers. You didn't have to go to self-service.
That's right.
Like there was somebody there. You gave it to them. You could talk to them and say, "Oh, you're a Star Trek fan too. Oh, you're gonna love these blueprints." I said, "Thank you."
And as you checked out, it was right next to a little clay model of the Doomsday Machine. So.
Yeah, there was none of this nonsense where it's like scan it and then they don't let you leave until they confirm that you got a receipt for it. It's all a bunch of nonsense. Because once I pay for something, I don't want to be stuck there to wait online to have them check the receipt. It's like I paid for it; it's mine now.
One place you won't be able to get this game is in an airport.
Yeah, that's true. I can't imagine, but who knows? You don't know. But guys, this sounds so exciting, and this really sounds like a dream project for you because, of course, you worked on Star Wars, you worked on a bunch of other franchises, but you're both obviously huge Star Trek fans, so this must have been really a thrill.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I can't remember a time when Star Trek wasn't, something I was into. And so it's just kind of funny, like uh this kind of fell into my lap, but getting the chance to work on this and also figure out how we wanted to tell stories within the
Mhm.
game to let you as the player kind of direct how the story is going to emerge. That it's a really special opportunity.
If you hadn't done the Dominion War, like, is there another part of Star Trek history that either now or in the future you would love to explore?
I think the two big ones for me that if we get a chance to go to other eras in this game, I would be most excited for are I would really love to do some TOS era stuff. I think that there's just a ton of great stuff in there, and the campaign would probably be a little less, you know, it wouldn't probably have a war focus. It would have much more of a like, you know, wide-ranging diplomacy stuff. But you could still do a ton of fun stuff in there, and it would just be really neat to design the ships from that era too. And the other one that we hope we'll be able to get to is the sort of the lower decks era, the misadventures of the Cerritos, because you could just design a game at sort of such a different scale.
That would be.
It would be a lot
I'm
of
in.
fun.
I'm
But
in.
the great thing about that is that Mike McMahon would actually play it with you.
Yes,
He's
you
that
would.
kind of guy. So it's like he would do the test with you. It's like, oh, before we go to have this manufactured, we want to test and make sure we're. So he'd come and play it with you just to make sure. But because he's such a super fan, so that's what you want in your Star Trek showrunner. You want somebody who loves Star Trek, who gets it, who wants to do right by it, and Mike's one of those people. What about you, Michael? What do you think? If you could do any other era other than the Dominion War, in Star Trek, what would you do?
I mean, I grew up a next generation kid. I would, probably want to do some of the different. I mean, we get the chance to do that with this era, but I'd want to cover some of the conflicts, like like the Borg, uh,
Hmm.
that sort of stuff. Some of the Cold War with the Romulans. I always loved those episodes. Um, so even though it's kind of like adjacent to the era that we're covering, and that's kind of the nice thing about uh, with a minis game, you because you don't have to has to be the exact sequence of events. You can kind of
Yeah.
have everything. You can have your cake and eat it too that way.
Well, you could totally do a completely different version of Encounter at Farpoint.
One that's
Yeah.
good.
I would like the solar starfish, like this,
Yeah.
the thing from the
Mhm.
end. It's great joy and gratitude. It's funny. I don't know if you guys all saw that the Nacelle company, they announced we knew about this for a long time, but they finally officially announced it, which was their unproduced Trek line of toys. So like characters that have never been, they announced their first four. It's Tuvix and Peter Preston, first made Peter Preston, and
Wait a second.
Captain Rachel Garrett, and
Is Peter Preston dead or alive? That's my only question.
well, yeah,
Is he-
and so
He's a
and,
doll.
oh,
He's
and
a doll.
and
Doll.
Valkyris from Star Trek
Right.
3. It's a
Oh my
great
God.
lead off,
Oh,
right?
Chris.
So who's your unproduced Star Trek ship or person that you would want to see? I'll start with Max.
Let's see. Boy, in our game, I think
A Packlet.
this
A
is
Packlet.
they would be fun. They would be fun. I'm gonna go with Roga Danar.
Oh,
my gosh.
wow, that's
Okay.
a deep cut.
All right.
Wow.
I
Wow.
am
Okay, what about you, Michael?
I am surprised Max did not say Captain Jellicoe because I
Hmm.
know how much he loves
Well,
it.
they're going to do Jellicoe. They're
I'm
doing
hoping to
Jellicoe.
I'm hoping we'll get him in there. I think Roga Danar's chances are slim.
Jellicoe is on the short list.
We all love Captain Jellicoe. Let's face it. Get it done.
There
Get it
are-
done, guys. Get
there
it
are
done.
five
Get these
dice.
fish out of my ready room.
Yeah. So
Motherfucker.
those are all good choices. Yeah. So anyway, guys, we're so happy to have you on the show, and we want to tell everybody it's the holiday, it's the time of miracles. If you want to see expansion sets, you want to support this game, you want to support these great guys. It's from WizKids, and Michael and Max have put their heart and souls into creating great Star Trek content, Star Trek Into the Unknown. So pick it up today, wherever you get your tabletop games. And thank you guys.
As Captain Kirk said in Generations, sounds like fun.
I drank what?
Yeah. Thanks, guys. And Michael, it was great having you at our panels and seeing you in Des Moines. And of course, we invite everyone to join us in Columbus, Ohio, where the Treksperts will be there in full force. Darren Dochterman, Ashley Miller, myself. And that is coming up in December 6th to the 8th. So you don't want to miss us in Columbus, Ohio for a fun time at GalaxyCon Columbus. Discover the Treksperts. Okay, guys. Well, thank you so much. Thanks. And we'll look forward to seeing what's next from you guys. We're back. And I have to say, I almost understand what tabletop gaming is now. So I'm really appreciative to Michael and Max for explaining
I
it
forgot
to me.
to ask them how big a table we'd need.
Oh.
Big enough.
Steve Melching does
As
the
big
tabletop
as outer
gaming.
space.
And with my good friend Kevin Levy, also, who is very much into that world and is actually now creating tabletop games. I think you got to it takes a lot of brains to do that. I couldn't do that. It's too sophisticated, too much attention to detail.
Dashwick has a complete whole gaming table in his garage.
Right. But don't call it a man cave. I made that mistake once. He goes, this is a non-gender thing. It's like, you know, it's I forget what he called it. Gaming Emporium. I don't
very
remember.
fluid.
Don't call it man cave. But to me, it's like where no man has gone before.
For dinner.
Always
Where no
was
man
to
cave
me-
has gone before.
To me, where no man has gone before, always was humankind. It was never men. It was never specifically about men, right?
Right.
It
Because
was
that's
all
literally
people,
what it means.
all mankind, right? So when it changed to no one, I got it. That was fine. But
Right. It's not like when Neil Armstrong landed on the moon, he wasn't like, one small step for a man, and by
but
that
not
I mean
women.
the man-woman
This is
haters
how I
club.
get away from all the nagging. I need
That's
to
right.
be on the moon.
There's
That's
no
right.
nagging on the
That's
moon.
his man cave.
From Stella.
To the moon.
So, but yeah. So when he says, "Oh, don't call it a man cave because it's gendered," it's like not bad. Whatever. It's fine. But
don't call it a comeback. I've been here for years.
So, but I think if you play tabletop games, you kind of need like a man cave. You need that big
man cave.
table. You can't put it
man
on your dining
cave.
room table or anything, can you? I don't know.
Well, you can. You just get in trouble.
I didn't ask them about that. I had a lot more questions, but I'm serious about this whole thing about the airports. Like and it's everywhere. It's like you go to Target or whatever, and it's like they try and drive you to the self-serve, to the self-checkout.
Yeah.
And it's like, that takes me more time. First, I got to find the UPC code. And half the time it doesn't work, or I'm doing it wrong. And then they got to call somebody over to help me. And it's like, I could have been done with the cashier already, right? Yeah. Now, if they wanted to say, okay, well, if you're going to self-check out, we're going to give you a discount. Why do I want to encourage them to fire people who are getting health benefits, who need the job? So by going to the self-checkout,
if I'm going to work
undermining
this checkout thing, I want $15 an hour.
Yeah, right. Yeah. If I'm working for you now, I
or at
want
least spot me
benefit.
the first $15.
So I know it sounds ridiculous, but I'm telling you, it annoys me. It annoys me, and that's why when they say at the airport, I'm going to buy something that anywhere else at 7-Eleven would be $3. It's $10 at the airport, and they say, oh no, you need to do self checkout if you're doing a credit card. I'm like, well then I'll pay cash, and it's like, oh. But I want the cashier to check me out. I don't want to do self-checkout. I don't want to do it. It's like,
don't mince words, Mark. What do you really?
I don't. I feel like the M5. I feel like Captain Dunzel. Like everything's being replaced by automation. I don't want that. I'm a people person. I want to interact with people.
Eventually, this podcast will be done by automation.
You know what? Bet we could. We should do an episode where we let AI record this. We just say, record an episode or write a script for Inglorious Treksperts podcast, and we could just read it.
And we could read our voices to it and just have like AI avatars of ourselves that just do an episode.
Wow, that would be great. We would save so much time.
We
And
would.
it'd be great.
It would be
and it
amazing.
knows exactly what to say. Isn't The Survivors a great episode? Yes, it is, Rob. Hey, Darren, you want to talk about Voyager? No,
No.
let's talk about the original series again.
That's right.
It's like
I thought
it's so
this
predictable.
podcast was about Star Trek.
That's right.
Insert Mark's rant. And it's like, and now Ashley makes a joke about the colon. It's like, what? So I don't know. Anyway, if you want to have more
anatomy
delightful
break.
conversations like this, you want to join us in Columbus, Ohio, this December 6th to 8th at GalaxyCon. This is our final, I got to say, this has been quite a year, guys, with the Inglorious Treksperts live tour, hasn't it? We went to some
Indeed.
great
And
places.
so much fun.
Columbus, Richmond, we
Raleigh.
went to Oklahoma City. Well, you went to Raleigh. You
San
had a great
Jose.
time. You had a great time in Raleigh because we weren't there. I don't blame you. I could see how that would be fun.
It was
San
one for the
Jose.
80s.
And of course, Vegas. What a year. What a year.
What a year. And what a savings by Grapthar's Hammer.
Yeah. And we're going to be announcing our schedule for next year. So if you missed us this year, you got another chance next year,
But
2025,
one
as we
place
count
we
down.
won't be is on the Star Trek cruise.
That's
Yeah,
right.
we won't
because
be on the
F
Star
those
Trek cruise.
guys in the
Damn
A.
right. Those sons of bitches. They did my friend Darren dirty, and I won't
screw
have
'em.
it. I won't have it.
Screw 'em.
I don't care. I wasn't going to say anything bad, but then when they canceled the invite, when they took it back, you can't give a gift and take it back. It's like, oh, we want you, but we don't. We don't really.
Yeah, if we wanted
It's
that
like-
crap, we'd get married.
They're
And it's like you don't know what you're missing because he's the glue that holds his pie. The voices,
You
the insights,
used
the
up
story.
all the glue on purpose.
And let me tell you, the only person who actually worked on Star Trek of the three of us, well, I guess you could say Ashley did, was Darren. I mean, Ashley kind of did doing the Star Trek Beyond with Bob Orsi, but it never got made. But
That's
Darren actually had stuff that was on screen. He did on the Voyager, on Picard season 2,
That's not-
on he was like he's Mr. Star Trek.
No, that's someone else.
Oh, boy.
I mean, I've watched the show once or twice, so I got that going for me.
Yeah.
But Darren actually
you have
worked on it.
many a tome about the history of Star Trek
That's true.
and related stuff.
That's
So-
true. That's true.
We
Okay.
all belong here, Mozambique.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. I'll give you that. So look, we're doing so much now with the Treksperts. I know there's too many episodes to listen to. You got the Deck 78, you got the Inglorious Treksperts. You can watch it on YouTube. You can listen on the podcast. A lot of stuff, but we're gonna keep doing it. I
Yeah,
don't
whether
know
you like it or
why, but
not.
we're gonna keep doing it because you
Whether
seem
we
to
like
still
it or
care.
not.
You seem to still care. People are still listening. People love it. And we're glad you do. And so we're going to keep doing it at least till the 60th anniversary, which is coming up in 2026. Then we got to reassess.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Then Mark might retire again.
That's right.
I hope I'm here in 2026. You never know.
We never know.
You get hit by a
You
bus.
never know.
Let's not talk about buses. And
Yeah. That's dark.
You could get hit by a
Dark
truck.
place.
That's right.
A very
You know?
dark place.
Just
You
look
know
what happened
what
to
you
poor
just
Edith Keeler.
did.
If you don't have somebody to hold you back from crossing the street,
You could get hit
be
by
in
a
trouble.
scooter.
Could get hit by a scooter. I told you in Vegas, if it hadn't been for you guys keeping me from, I could have gotten hit again. Could have been real bad.
Yeah.
Well,
Could have been
if
real
we'd
bad.
listened to that tricorder report, we would have had to let you die.
Yeah.
That tricorder report.
Damn it, Darren, do you know what you've done?
You remember that at the end of Bubble Guppy's tricorder
Yeah.
report?
Report. Yep.
Yeah, for those of you who don't have kids, you have no idea what we're talking about.
That's
but it
right.
sticks
You
in
also
your
don't
brain.
know why it's time for lunch.
Even though my oldest daughter is going to college, I still remember Bubble Guppies like it was yesterday.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, okay.
Right
Well,
then.
this is good. This was going to be a short one. But
Yeah, it's really
possible.
fucking
Next week,
short.
the game Bubble Guppies into the Unknown.
With a colon. Okay. Well, look, thank you so much for joining us. If you want to subscribe, you can do so at trekspertsplus.com or visit us on our Discord channel, which is in the show notes. The link is in the show notes. Of course, you can share your thoughts with us and grow stronger through the sharing by emailing us at trekspertsplus@gmail.com or any of your favorite social channels by sharing what you think of this or any other episode. But the best way to show your love is a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify or anywhere you listen to the podcast. So on behalf of Ashley Edward Miller, Darren R. Doctorman, and Mark A. Altman, keep on trekking. Hey, ingloriously, of course. Shh.